Oklahoma football fans, college football fans, welcome into Oklahoma at the voice of college football. This is Sooner Sunday Live. We have a lot to get into because the Oklahoma Sooners had a big revenge win yesterday, and we've got to talk about that, and then even talk about the new opponent coming up this upcoming week. Just briefly, we'll get into more preview of the Ole Miss game and give more of an in-depth. But to take a look at what happened to Ole Miss, I've got all of my notes here. I mean, we've got a ton to get into today because it was a big win. It really did feel like a domination for Oklahoma. I do want to point this out just because it feels kind of funny how Oklahoma fans, I feel like they were all kind of. I've seen a lot of Oklahoma fans saying Texas didn't dominate Oklahoma. That was 23-6, and then Oklahoma wants to turn around and say, "Oh, Oklahoma dominated South Carolina." Just some weird things that I've seen on the internet here lately. And I get it. But anyways, we're going to get into it and talk about Oklahoma, their big win, comeback win, revenge win, a South Carolina team who dominated Oklahoma the season before, when it started off with three really quick turnovers that turned into three really quick touchdowns. Oklahoma comes to Columbia, South Carolina, to get their revenge. But first, before we get into it, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching anywhere other than YouTube, jump over to the YouTube channel and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you want to help support the show a little bit further, we are trying to pump out a ton of content and do a lot of extra things and build a community here at Oklahoma at the voice of college football. So if you would, become a member today just by clicking that link down in the description below. You can go to the YouTube channel and click join, or just scan that QR code. If you're watching it on your TV, you can scan that QR code, and it'll take you to sign up. Become a member today for as low as $2.99 a month. All that does is it just gives back to the channel here. It gives back to the network, gives back to what we're doing here. We're giving you guys content, Oklahoma fans content on live shows, Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, as well as post-game on Fridays. That is a ton of content that we're pumping out for you guys, so just help support the show a little bit further. All donations and super chats will be read live on the show as well, so if you want to comment in there and support the channel a little bit, that is a sure way to get your comment read live on the show. Of course, the memberships are just one way that we're trying to give back to our listeners and create a community. So once we build up enough of a membership there, enough members in the membership program, then we're able to start to do a lot more of what we're planning on doing and trying to grow this brand and grow this community. So please become a member today for as low as $2.99 a month. It helps much more than you realize. You can follow us on social media. We're posting a lot on X and Instagram mainly. Then you can follow the Voice of College Football, the network, the Voice of College Football, for much more than just Oklahoma, just covering all things in the world of college football. But yes, we had so much that I had to print my notes out on paper, so I have detailed notes this morning, or I guess this afternoon. I don't know. It feels like a weird day to me. Just feels like the day has flown by. That's why we started a little late. But hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. Because, we've got to get into the big win. It was a big day for Oklahoma football yesterday. The big, emphatic 26-7 win over the South Carolina Gamecocks in Columbia made it a little bit sweeter for Oklahoma fans to know that Oklahoma not only now has 2 wins in SEC play, but you got one on the road. So you've got to take some of these road games. This was one that you really had to have. This is one that, especially with South Carolina not being the South Carolina team that a lot of people thought that they would be this season, this was the one that Oklahoma really needed when it came down to it. You really needed Oklahoma to have this win because you just lost to Texas the week before. You had to bounce back and get right, and you did it. You did it against South Carolina, in South Carolina. And really made a statement on both sides at Williams-Brice Stadium there in Columbia. But of course, before we get to the end of the episode, we even have to talk a little bit about Ole Miss because we're starting to look ahead now. It's already a new week. It's Sunday, which means Saturday is already gone. You got to shake off the win and move on to the next one. Ole Miss ended up dropping their game, but still a very hard-fought game against Georgia, and they proved that they're going to be a very tough opponent for homecoming for Oklahoma this upcoming Saturday. So we'll get to all of that and much more. But first, starting off with the good news of Oklahoma taking down South Carolina. Being able to take down a good opponent, definitely a solid opponent. I wouldn't say that South Carolina's any good. So this is something that I put out there on social media yesterday, is that I believe that South Carolina and Auburn are very comparable. When you look at the two teams right now, obviously I think they've got different weaknesses, different strengths, but I think just overall greatness, how good they are this year. So overall goodness, I suppose you might say. I think they're both comparable programs. So if that's the case right now, anyways, this season, I think they're both very comparable. If that's the case, I feel like Oklahoma's improved. If they aren't comparable, then I don't know. I guess it's just up in the air. You can take it for what it's worth. I think Oklahoma showed some major improvement. And to start off with the most encouraging talking point for the Sooners and what they had, I think it was a big day on the run game, the big day on the ground, being able to finally establish some sort of legitimate rushing attack against a legitimate opponent. I think that was really crucial for the Oklahoma Sooners. We'd been talking about it all week. I think a lot of fans were ready to see that run game going all week, but I think that it needs to keep on going. It can't just stop with South Carolina. You can't just have a good day against South Carolina and then shake it off. But the Sooners ended up rushing for 171 total yards on 40 carries against South Carolina. And honestly, it wasn't even a close game because of the run game. So it was definitely the best game that this Oklahoma Sooners team has had on the ground all season long. So definitely big stuff. Torrey Blaylock, he had a breakout performance. I don't really know if you call it a breakout performance because I think we already knew that he was the guy. It's just that he hasn't really been given the chance to show that off. And he was given the chance yesterday, and he ended up doing just that. He ends up having 101 rushing yards on a career high, tying his career high, season high. And, so a big time day for him. He also got himself a touchdown and 19 carries. The thing with Torrey Blaylock, too, was that he set the tone early for Oklahoma. There was a second and very long, I believe that was 2nd and 20. He ends up getting an 18-yard run because of the penalty. So second and 20, big-time 18-yard run to set up 3rd and short for the Sooners. They end up marching it down there, getting down for a touchdown that was closed off and sealed by Torrey Blaylock himself with another 18-yard run to get into the end zone. So 2 18-yard runs. He ends up, kind of getting the Sooners back into position where they needed to be, and then getting it down there inside the red zone, scores on that big-time run. So, it was just a 75-yard drive that was 50 yards, I believe. 50 yards of that first opening drive was all Torrey Blaylock. And so, just a huge day for him, especially starting off that early, getting yourselves to a 7-0 lead, to 7-0 lead that just felt like that was the drive that you needed to open with to not just win this game, but feel good about how you won this game. So, Torrey Blaylock, absolutely. That was his second 100-yard rushing game this season. Also, so most rushing yards by a running back this season, tied by himself, Torrey Blaylock. He is the guy. And it was also the most rushing yards, and I posted this last night. It was the most rushing yards that an Oklahoma running back has had at Oklahoma since Xavier Robinson against Alabama last season. And it goes back even further than that into the 2023 season before an Oklahoma running back has had over 100 yards. So, this was a big performance. It was a much-needed performance. It was one that you can look at the Temple game and say, hey, Torrey Blaylock had a big game there. He now just ties the rushing yards that he had there. And so, we already had this from him. We already knew this. But he does this against a Power 4 opponent, and not just against a Power 4 opponent, but then against an SEC opponent. Much needed for the Oklahoma Sooners. Very much needed. So Torrey Blaylock, obviously one of the big players in this game, a crucial moment for him in this game and a crucial moment for this offense as they were able to get that run game going. And then, even after the game, Blaylock, whenever he was asked about it, he gave a lot of credit to the line, and specifically against, he gave a lot of that credit to Fabechi Wiwu and some of the things that he had been doing all week. So, that was really big to see from Tory Blaylock, big game. And then the leadership afterwards to not just take the credit for himself, but to point out that who it really was that got him going. And the offensive line, we'll get to that. They did do much better in this game in many ways. And so we'll talk to that. We'll also critique that a little bit. Not criticize, but to critique that just a little bit as well. The other running back that got going was sophomore Xavier Robinson, X-Rob. He provided really the perfect complement and really proved that we've got that 1-2 punch in two young guys in the backfield, and that is Xavier Robinson, Tory Blaylock being the number one, and Xavier Robinson. It's just obvious at this point that you're not going to get Jaden not going. I don't have anything confirmed on what's going on there with Javonte Barnes. I know that the whole injury situation last week, I still feel like we might not see Javonte Barnes play another game this season for the Oklahoma Sooners, as well as several other players, but we'll probably get to some of that this week. But for Xavier Robinson, a big-time game for him as well. Just over 5 yards per carry, 58 yards, and a touchdown on 11 carries. So a really big game from him. Again, you get these running backs into rhythm, and this is the kind of stuff that will happen for the Oklahoma Sooners. You get them into a rhythm. You have to give them the ball, feed them the ball, and get them going downhill. Get them feeling some sort of purpose, and get them feeling some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Get them feeling that momentum rolling, and get them into the game. And that's how you get these running backs going. So it's really crucial for the running backs to get going. Blaylock and Robinson combined for 159 yards total of the 171 yards. That is the biggest running back game that Oklahoma has really had, especially against a Power 4 opponent, because I think it's not really fair to try to compare to maybe what they did against Temple this year, or even going back to Maine last year. That's not the standard at Oklahoma. The standard is, can you do that against a Power 4 opponent? Can you do that against an SEC opponent? And to do it on the road, I think that was definitely, and I see in the chat, thanks, that's what I need. Get them that momentum, get them that energy, get them rolling downhill. That's what these running backs need, and that's exactly what they got today. So Xavier Robinson, Tory Blaylock, huge day for both of them, huge day for the running back room, huge day for the offense, getting that running game going and getting them looking truly, with a true attack, with an honest attack there in the run game, and give some true balance to this offense. I think that was extremely crucial for Oklahoma. Going over to the offensive line, because you can't leave those big guys out when you talk about the run game. The offensive line helped with this run game tremendously. They delivered really, I think, their best run blocking performance of the season, and it still has a lot of improvement, obviously. And so I don't want us to look at this and act as if it's all fixed, because the South Carolina defensive front was really weak, and on top of that, they were without one of their best in Dylan Stewart for most of the game. So that is something to take into consideration. That is kind of my critique about how the offensive line performed. I don't think that you look at the offensive line and just say that, hey, there's too much to fix, that they're completely gone, because they showed some promise in this game, and they showed what they're capable of. And they're still doing that against, a D1, an SEC defensive line, which is really important. So, I think that's extremely important to point out for this offensive line. They had a good game. Now, not to get too full on them, because they still have a lot of improvement, and they didn't have a good game against, say, I don't know who's a really good, Texas was probably one of the best defensive lines that Oklahoma's going to go against this year. I'm trying to think of who else might be better. And, I think you're going to have a lot of comparable defensive lines here coming up. Tennessee is going to be pretty tough. That's going to be a tough one. Alabama, I think there's some weaknesses there that you can have this kind of a game against. I really do. Even LSU, I think they show some weaknesses. I think that'll be another very tough one. But anyways, very good game from this offensive line, being able to look really solid against that South Carolina defensive front. Oklahoma rushed for 50 yards on that opening drive, all by Torrey Blaylock. Big time opening drive, and that's more than they managed the entire game against Texas. So they were able to do more in that opening drive than they could against Texas. And so again, I know you're kind of comparing two teams that aren't the same, and Texas performed really well against Oklahoma in that Red River rivalry, but I think you can still take away the positives from this. And to look at over 100 yards rushing at halftime for the Sooners. That was right around 136 rushing yards at halftime. So ultimately, this rushing performance really kind of marks that defining game for Oklahoma to get things turned around. And, historically, Oklahoma has been known to do this. Now, I don't know why they have to wait until week 6, 7, or 8 to do it, but now in week 8, they finally get something going in the run game against a very worthy opponent. And I think that's historically what happens for Oklahoma. You get that one game that gets the run game going, and then all of a sudden you've got more of a balanced attack. And it's happened many times. We can think of this many times where you go into the Red River rivalry not really sure about this Oklahoma run game, and then all of a sudden it turns on, and the rest of the season things are going well for them. It's happened many times. Think back to like the Jalen Hurts days. Even back before that, I think even like when we had guys like Dominic Williams with the big time run, and he just had an amazing season after that. Even DeMarco Murray, I feel like DeMarco Murray was one of the backs too that had a really big game there against Texas and then turns it on in the rest of the season. Could this be that kind of a game for Oklahoma where their run game turns it on against a really good opponent, maybe too late into the season, but still nonetheless turns on the run game against a good opponent, and they're able to kind of turn things around there on out? I really hope that's the case. I don't have a lot of confidence in that being the case, but it very well could be, and the Oklahoma Sooners finally get that run game going against South Carolina here in week 8. All right, I'm going to jump over to the chat real quick just to see you guys in the chat. Stacy points out something. I love that the like button turns into a football. I've not seen that in a like button. We didn't do that, I don't think. I'll have to talk to the production team. I don't think we did that. I don't think we can do that. But if that's the case, that is pretty awesome. So somebody take a screen grab of that and send it my way. Let's see here. Yeah, so I will go to Mr. Dilligaff. He says, not was a waste of NIL money and not a good look for Nagy. Yeah, I think you're not wrong. Okay, I'm not gonna say you're wrong, because you're not at all. I think it wasn't a good look for Nagy, but I hope you guys can see what Nagy saw in Jaden Knott before. He had a 1,300 yard season, and it's crazy to think that if you were to tell somebody that, hey, we have a running back on our team right now that had a 1,300 yard season, you'd be looking at Torrey Blaylock and possibly Xavier Robinson and be like, oh yeah, I mean, if he had the ball. But it wasn't either of them. It was Jaden Knott, who looks atrocious and is a liability. So it is a bad look on him for that standpoint. But I hope that he's done enough outside of the Jaden Knott experience to be able to kind of prove to Sooner fans that he's doing just fine. Let's see. He's going over to Stacy one more time. She says, we were discussing this, which will be a tougher game, Tennessee or Bama. I think Tennessee will be tougher than Bama. Based on last night, I think Bama is going to be tougher. Based on last night, I think, Bama is the elite team in the SEC right now, and it's in Tuscaloosa, very tough place to play. Tennessee is going to be tough, and I'm not taking anything away from Tennessee. They're going to be a tough opponent. They're going to be it's in Knoxville, which is, again, another tough place to play. But I just think Tennessee's not as tough as Alabama right now. Tennessee is not that elite level. They're that good level. I'd say they're on the same level as Oklahoma. So Oklahoma has a really good shot to win that Tennessee game. Now, it's a couple weeks away, so we'll see when we get closer to that point how high our confidence level is in beating Tennessee. But I think Alabama is the one that we look at right now and say, for me anyways, that's the one that's going to be tough for me to pick Oklahoma to win, unless they show something incredible in the Ole Miss and Tennessee games. I'm not confident about that Alabama win. I have some confidence. I'd say I'm 64% sure that Oklahoma can beat Tennessee in Knoxville. So when we get closer to time, I'll be able to tell a little bit more. But based on last night, I think Alabama is the real deal. I think Alabama is going to be that team to beat for sure. All right, had to take a quick swig as we get on to our next topic. Obviously, for John Mateer, it was not the showing that he wanted to have his first week back from injury. He didn't have a full week of practice. He didn't even really get to throw the ball much in practice in that week leading up to Texas. It really was a questionable call to throw him in the game there. And especially in what was the biggest game of the season, and I think even to this point, it's going to stand out as that was the defining moment for Oklahoma throughout this season. Because of that Texas loss, Oklahoma and the way that they lost, Oklahoma fans and I think even just the program has to have a little bit less confidence in themselves going forward. I don't think necessarily the program is in terms of the coaches or the players, but I just think there's some lack of confidence now because of that loss. I think the players can bounce back just fine. I think they can show some things that they could show the rest of the fan base and prove us wrong, but the fan base definitely has a lack of confidence in this team because of that performance against Texas. And a big part of that was because of John Mateer. He wasn't ready to go, and it didn't seem that way in many ways for many reasons, was not ready to go in that Texas win. But, after throwing those 3 interceptions against Texas, he ends up turning it around, bouncing it back with a very composed and a very efficient performance against South Carolina. Didn't put up video game stats, didn't put up the stats that you would have expected to see from him if he were 100% healthy and never went through that surgery, but he had a very, very complete performance. A very, very composed and efficient. I think those are 2 words that really stand out to me when you look at John Mateer. He wasn't putting the ball into harm's way. There was a couple that could have been intercepted, but it wasn't necessarily that he put the ball in harm's way. There was one that was a really good play on the defenders. There was another one that kind of bounced off the hands, could have been picked off. But just a really good, solid game overall. 18 of 26 for passing, 150 yards, 1 touchdown through the air, no turnovers. He even had, I believe, 14 yards rushing on the day as well, which was actually really nice to see that John Mateer didn't run the ball and Oklahoma still ran the ball well and efficiently, effectively. And that's just a huge takeaway from this Oklahoma team that had no run game outside of John Mateer in the first couple of weeks, in the first several weeks. So, no turnovers. That's exactly what the Oklahoma Sooners needed after that big loss against Texas, to turn around and have a big game against South Carolina to get yourselves ready for now what seems like the next biggest game on the schedule in Ole Miss, because Ole Miss isn't joking around. I know they lost to Georgia, and we'll talk about Ole Miss a little bit later on. They're still a very good team, and I think Lane Kiffin has this program in a very good spot. So it was a much-needed game from John Mateer and the Oklahoma offense. He led touchdown drives of 75 yards, 92 yards in one drive, showcased some really improved decision-making. It looked like the John Mateer prior to the Kent State game, where he didn't play. So going back, what would that have been against Auburn, Temple, Michigan, and Illinois State? That it looked like that John Mateer showed up against South Carolina. Now, didn't go out there full force and throw, like I said, video game stats or anything, but he put up good numbers, solid numbers, and it was efficient. That's all you need. It was a very confident game from John Mateer. You go forward with John Mateer and say, all right, he's back. I think we got our quarterback, and we got him back in there and performing at full strength. So really good stuff. Connected with Isaiah Satania for crucial 20-yard touchdown pass in the third quarter, extended the lead to 24-7. That was a really beautiful dime, and we'll actually dive into some of that here this week. So stay tuned, because we will kind of dive into some of these really big plays. Didn't have time to get everything kind of put together and pieced together for us here today. And even added a perfect 40-yard punt. That was probably the highlight of the day, because I think you even have to give John Mateer credit for the safety in the sense that he had that little 40-yard pooch punt, and then Elijah Thomas gets down there. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Elijah Thomas gets down there, makes the perfect catch, downs it right there inside the 1-yard line. And then Oklahoma's able to get a safety off of it, which we'll get to that one here in a moment as well. A big time stop for the defense to get that safety. But I think in some regard, you have to credit John Mateer for that safety and give some of the, at least one of those points over to him, or split it and say he gets credit for the 2 points, as well as Marcus Strong on the defense getting the tackle there in the end zone for the safety. But John Mateer's punt, that has to be the highlight of the day for him. He had some good throws and everything, some good drives, but that was just, it was one of those plays that you don't expect from the quarterback. And even when it happens, you don't really expect it to go down to perfection. And that one was down to perfection, leading to the safety. So really big. Even Mateer's quote after the game, he kind of really captured his mindset perfectly throughout the game, because he says, I expected better than that, talking about the Texas game. And today, whether I was feeling good or not, I was going to play, got myself to a good point. The team was in a good spot, and yeah, played well. So really good response from John Mateer. Not only did we get the good response to the media throughout that week of losing to Texas, but then you get a good response from John Mateer leading into the next week and going into that South Carolina win. So really big win for the Sooners, really big bounce back for John Mateer, and it feels like he's got his confidence back. It feels like he's got his moxie back. It feels like he's back to full strength. And there's still some that I think the grip might be bothering him a little bit, but he's not letting it affect his game overall. So that's some really good news from John Mateer. Big game against South Carolina there. Let's see here. Yeah, going over to Jimmy Satterfield real quick. He says ET is a special teams standout. Yeah, he had a few really good plays there, and specifically that one inside the 1 yard line. I think that was really big. Let's see here. Says Mr. Dilligaff says the toughest game the toughest game is always the next one, because players and coaches have to concentrate on the next game and not look ahead. It is. You're right. And the toughest game, I think the most crucial game is always the next one. I think that's what you teach your players as you go forward throughout the season, is that, all right, now that we're done with that game, the most important game is the next one coming up on the schedule. All right, let's get into the defense for the Oklahoma Sooners against South Carolina. Really good performance from the defense, and a solid performance. I don't think you could have really expected too much more from this defense compared to I think from what you saw from this defense, if I can get my words to come out properly here, that was what you expected from them, and that's what you got. You couldn't really expect too much more than what you got there from the defense, and I was extremely happy with them. They were already the nation's best going into the Texas game, still one of the nation's best going into this game. But they absolutely dominated this South Carolina offense and put them into a frenzy nonstop. Specifically, I think even though Lenore Sellers had a lot of broken tackles and some things that you kind of wish that you could have done a little bit better there and could have gotten some sacks, could have gotten some tackles for loss, it was still huge. It was really an elite defensive showing from this defense. They had 6 sacks. South Carolina quarterback Lenore Sellers, he was really kind of in that frenzy nonstop. There were so many times where he either gave up tackles for a loss or sacks, or just couldn't even get back to the line because of the pressure in his face and how quickly it was getting up in his face. And that's the kind of stuff that you need from this Oklahoma defense, is getting back there, wreaking havoc, especially on a guy like Lenore Sellers, who is extremely dangerous with his feet and what he can do in the run game, keeping him stagnant and going for negative yards on the day. That was exactly what you needed. But for Oklahoma, 13 tackles for a loss, tied for the nation lead in that category now. I'm not sure if maybe that's not the case, if it updated since last night whenever I wrote that down, but get back into the lead for most tackles for a loss in the nation. They limited South Carolina to just 224 yards of offense and only got over that 200-yard mark because of the garbage time, getting in there where you had third, fourth, several depth players in there playing. But the depth players, this is the difference for these depth players, is that you get them in there and you're playing your third string in garbage time. What happens a lot of times with defenses is you give up a garbage time touchdown, a garbage time field goal. It kind of inflates the score, maybe the stats a little bit for the losing team. And it kind of makes you feel like, man, why did we have to give that up? But this Oklahoma defense, they gave up some yards and definitely gave some of that up. And I believe there might have been a penalty to help them. Maybe not. I'm trying to remember that last drive correctly. But I know they gave up some yards, let them down into the red zone. But they don't give up, and they force a bad pass that ends up getting intercepted. So Oklahoma's first defensive interception on the day, excuse me. But it was a good one. It was good interception. They did have the interception by Taylor Wine, which we'll get to. Taylor Wine on the punt, so picking out the punt. But anyways, held the Gamecocks 3 of 15 on third downs. 3 of 15. That is, what is that? 1 for 5 ratio. One for 5. Every 5 they were getting 1. So 3 for 15 on third downs. That is the defense that this Oklahoma team expects to have, especially on third downs, that they did not show against Texas. And so again, and I keep on bringing that game up because that's the game that's stuck in everybody's head as that's just who Oklahoma is. But I'm just trying to prove a point here that was not who Oklahoma is. It was a bad game, and that is not who Oklahoma is. Based on last night, I'm not sure that that's who Texas is either, but I do think that it was a good Texas team, regardless of what people are going to say about that. And Oklahoma just didn't perform their best. Entered the game as nation's leader in yards allowed at 193 yards per game, and really ultimately kept that standard. I know that goes up a little bit with 224 yards allowed per game, but against an SEC team, you're only allowing less than 250 total yards on offense. Against any Power 4 team, I'm going to take that every day of the week. If you're allowing less than 250 yards of total offense, less than 180 yards, passing, just that's what you're really searching for with a defense. And this is truly an elite defense. And I think anybody that wants to argue that is just out of their mind, completely out of their mind. Some of the standouts, Taylor Wine, starting off with the defensive end. Taylor Wine, a guy that was overlooked by many, came in kind of as he still is kind of a depth player even. He's not even your main guy, your main starter, but he's one of the best on this defense, and he proved it yesterday with a lot of things that aren't going to go on the stat book. I think he just had an amazing game. He had 4 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss. He was the Oklahoma voice of the college football, Oklahoma at the voice of college football player of the week. We posted that on X and Instagram. Please go check that out. Give it a like. Share it with a friend. Share it to Taylor Wine too. Make sure that gets out to him, because I don't think we tagged him on either of those posts. But that way he knows that the fans are watching him. Fans see him because, again, he's a depth player that wasn't even expected to be on the field as much as he has been, and he's out there and he's doing the thing, and he's looking really good doing it. So Taylor Wine, big time game for him. He recorded his first career interception, sniffing out that fake punt and getting the interception by the punter Mason Love. So picking off South Carolina's punter there in the third quarter. Made a touchdown-saving tackle on 4th and goal early in the game. He was the one that stopped him there in the goal line stand to be able to keep South Carolina out of the end zone. Lenore Sellers is a slippery dude too, so I thought they had him in the backfield. They missed him. I thought, he's getting into the end zone, and Taylor Wine makes the big stop. So huge for him there. I absolutely love to see that from him. He also made the touchdown touchdown saving tackle. It was later on in the game, and I didn't even put up my notes, but it was just a local product that continues to kind of prove himself and develop into a versatile weapon, especially out on that edge position. And he was asked kind of teasingly, I think it was Josh Calloway asked him kind of teasingly that you gonna try to switch over to tight end next year, and he says, we'll see. But no, truly an amazing weapon out there on defense, and had a big-time game. Also, shout out to Jacoby Johnson. Gets out there on the field, gets some playing time, records an interception. The closing minutes kind of seal that victory. Even just kind of giving really good coverage really throughout the game. And so liked what I saw him kind of limiting some big plays in the past games. So getting out there on the field and doing something with it, getting yourself an interception. Love to see that from the big guy. Marcus Strong, another guy, a depth player, making some noise on this Oklahoma defense. And it wasn't just Marcus Strong making the big tackle to get the safety, but it was how he did it. Gets in there, just brings down Matt Fuller, who is just a big dude. He's a strong dude, hard to bring down. Brings him down in the end zone for the safety with, what was that, about 4-minute mark, somewhere in there. And it's Oklahoma's second safety of the season, both coming in SEC games, right? Yeah, because the one was against Auburn, I believe. It would have been their third too if there was one against Kent State that was just barely out of the end zone. So, anyways, it wasn't just Marcus Strong bringing down Matt Fuller in the end zone for the safety, but then it was the way that the defense celebrated with him there. The way that the defense came out and celebrated with him and got up there, jumping off the sidelines. Big time game for Marcus Strong, mainly because of that. It was just big time moment for him, big time moment for this defense, making a stand and putting points on the board as a defense. That's always what you're aiming to do, helping your offense out by putting a few extra points there. Love to see that. And then Kendall Daniels, another defensive, just a guy that I think was overlooked in a lot of ways in the transfer portal, and even by myself. I knew that Kendall Daniels was going to be a guy that you can look at coming into this season, and you were going to be able to look at him and say, hey, that was a good pickup for Oklahoma. I'm glad that they had an extra depth piece, but now he is the guy at Cheetah. And we could talk more about that. I know Kendall Dolby really wanted to see him get out there and play this year. So I know there's a lot of rumors going on with him. He didn't quit the team. He's now played in 4 games, Kendall Dolby has, and he's not going to play in any more games for the rest of the season, most likely. It's not quitting on the team. He's healthy, but it's making a smart move for him. And so redshirting this season, we'll see what ends up happening towards the end. I think we can all make our own speculations on that, but when a guy like Kendall Daniels steps up and is playing your role to the extent that he is, you just kind of have to see the writing on the wall there. And I think that might be what it is. But Kendall Daniels, an amazing performance from him. 6 tackles, 1 sack, really set the tone early, had some big-time hits, and just some big-time moments for him, too. I think that he was huge. He had that one tackle for a loss on 3rd and goal from the 3-yard line, pushed them back out of just an easy run up the middle kind of play to now you're going to have to pass the ball, and then they end up stopping them there. And so it was really big. And then also Reggie Powers. I didn't put him down on my notes, but got to shout out Reggie Powers because that hit shouldn't have even been. What are we doing throwing the penalty flag there for targeting anyways? Just goes to show how bad the SEC officiating is. I'm glad that you have to review it because the review is just obvious. And, I think there was one of the commentators saying something about, he does lead in there with the helmet. He doesn't lead in with the helmet. Ducking your head down to the side is not leading in with your helmet. He ducks his head down to the side. The only reason why there was any kind of touching of Reggie Powers' helmet was because he hit him so hard that the receiver there ends up jarring his head forward and smacking into Reggie Powers. That was the only reason why there was any kind of contact to anyone's head at all, and it wasn't even close to targeting. I hate that. Hate it. Hate targeting being called at all, especially when it's not deserving to be called. But that was a huge, huge play for him. So love to see him out on the field. But truly for this defense, it was just a big time performance for the defense. The Sooners really made that critical 4th and goal stop from their own 5-yard line in the first quarter, preserving that 7-0 lead. And even just the goal line stand, it set the tone for the rest of the afternoon. That's the kind of stuff that you need. That sets the tone for this defense. It sets the tone, tells the offense that you mean business. And so really good showing from this defense overall. And if we're being honest, kept them out of the end zone. If we're being honest, South Carolina got the touchdown, but there's several things you can look there on that play. It felt like there was the false start. There was 2 holding penalties on the left side of the field, who were ironically the 2 that false started. So not only did you have to false start to try to beat, the defensive line of Oklahoma, but then you also had to hold on to them. And then the referee sets a little screen there, gets in the way. That kind of also, affected that play, I think, but there's a lot of things to look there. And I'm not complaining. I don't care. They got the 7 on the board, sure. But ultimately, really good performance from this Oklahoma defense. Solid performance, I would say elite performance from this Oklahoma defense against South Carolina. All right, going over to special teams, I think Tate Sandell, the kicker, matched his career long with a 55-yard field goal in the third quarter. Big-time field goal for him. Extended his streak to 12 consecutive field goals made. So he started off, missed his first one, and has made 12 straight since. So everyone was like, "Ooh, man, we don't have a kicker anymore." And he's like, "No. Hey, I just had to work off the rust, guys. I got a little nervous. That was my first kick as a Sooner. All right, give me a break." He steps out there and hits 12 straight since then. Really provided a lot of crucial points when the offense is stalled out so far this season. He's giving Oklahoma those points when you need them. And last season, Oklahoma didn't have that. We didn't get to see that as Oklahoma fans. So definitely need it. I don't even know if this is worth mentioning. I put it down in my notes because it's like, hey, it's a milestone. I don't know how much Oklahoma fans put this into as a milestone, but the Oklahoma Sooners are bowl eligible with only 7 games played. That's not a milestone for Oklahoma. It's not an achievement. It's not a celebration point. But from a season ago and even a couple seasons ago, I guess 3 seasons ago with Brent Venables' first year, that feels like, hey, we're able to celebrate something here. And I don't know how much you celebrate that, how much you take that in. But obviously, it's a 27th consecutive season that Oklahoma has been bowl eligible, which I think that's something. And only Georgia has a longer active bowl streak with 28 consecutive seasons. So it just kind of continues the remarkable excellence for this program. And also, Brent Venables gets them back at least to where they're not missing a bowl game, because that is embarrassing. To only make a bowl game is really embarrassing, and so that's why it's not an achievement just to make the bowl game, but it's an embarrassment to miss it. So I think that's where I kind of separate those two. But kind of keeping this takeaway from this victory, it was just a complete balanced performance for Oklahoma. You were able to pass the ball, you were able to run the ball, you were able to eat up clock on offense and win the time of possession in the first half and the second half, and you took away about a half a quarter away from South Carolina. You took about a half a quarter away from your opponent. That's what Oklahoma needs to do in these games. So that's really crucial for Oklahoma winning, being balanced, and then your defense standing up and being elite as they should be. And again, it just goes to show when this offense performs well, they don't have to put up 30, 40 points. They don't have to. I'm kind of tired of kind of seeing that narrative of when are we going to score 30 points? Why do we need to? If you're winning the game and you're winning it very consistently and concisely, I mean, I think you just take it for what it's worth. The run game finally clicked. Mateer avoided some big-time mistakes, bounced back, and then the defense was dominant. It was just a really balanced game. And at 6-1, 2-1 in the SEC, the Sooners right where they need to be at this point in the season. If I were to tell you that Oklahoma was 6-1 at the beginning of the season, you'd be happy. If I told you that they were 6-1 after a blowout loss to Texas, you would probably be just as skeptical about the rest of the season as you are right now. And I understand that completely, totally understand that. But nonetheless, I think you just kind of got to move on and take it for what it's worth. I guess we already kind of covered that, didn't we? All right, just wanted to see where I was at on the topics there. We're going to get into a little bit more, but before we do, let's jump over to the live chat. All super chats and donations will be read live on the show. So if you want to secure that your chat is read, please drop a donation super chat there in the chat. I don't see any there right now, so we'll just go jump through here for what we've got. Going over to Jesse. He's usually got some good chats in here. He says, Jesse Browning says, I think we are weak at corner, which Lane will take advantage of. Okay, so I think he means AKA Jackson Arnold to Cam Coleman style. Maybe. I don't think we're that weak. You didn't have Eli Bowen in that game against Auburn. And, I see some weaknesses there, sure. But Eli played a good game. I know some people might get frustrated with him on his pass interference there in the end zone, but I take that pass interference all day. For one, it was kind of like an iffy pass interference. It was one of those that the receiver definitely grabbed a hold of him. Man, excuse me, guys. I'm a little belchy this afternoon, and I don't even know why. I haven't had anything carbonated. Um, but it was kind of iffy. But I will take pass interference to save an easy touchdown any day of the week. So I think that was extremely overlooked, I guess. So yeah, I don't think Oklahoma's that weak. I think we'll be all right. I think we'll be just fine. We'll get into it. I don't know. I am concerned about this Ole Miss game. If Oklahoma wins this Ole Miss game, guys, I'm feeling really good about a 10-win season. I feel like Ole Miss and Alabama are the two that I'm feeling really iffy on. If they can win one of those two, it might switch over to Missouri, maybe, and then even LSU, maybe. Tennessee could be one to sneak up on Oklahoma and beat them. But the downside for Oklahoma this year is that you got all of your non-conference games out of the way already, and you don't have one of those easy non-conference games the way that you had Maine to break it up last season. You do have a bye week. When's our next bye week? I don't have that in front of me. When's our next bye week? Going over to Stacy, she says, Wine, Blaylock, and X are the standout players this year besides Mateer. This week, for sure. They are, for sure, the standout players this week. I don't know why I keep on sliding down in my chair today. This is a very comfortable chair, too, but today it's just not comfortable. You guys ever feel that? Just randomly. Yeah, it's just, this is a good chair. I don't know if you can see it, but it's nice, cushiony, comfy chair. Love it, but it's just not comfortable today. It's not. Anyways, let's move on here. Let's see here. Jimmy Satterfield says, who's the next head coach to get fired after Billy Napier? I agree with Jesse. I feel like Hugh Freeze is the guy on the hot seat right now. Who else is on the hot seat? Who else is on the hot seat? I feel like Deion Sanders has to be on the hot seat, but I don't think he is. Just because he's what is he doing there at Colorado? Not really winning. Man, I don't know. I tell you who's not on the hot seat right now. It's Brent Venables. I don't care what you guys say. I don't think it's Brent Venables. So far, he's 6-1 right now, looking like he could move forward into a 9 or 10 win season. We'll have to see. Thunder OU Sooner says no, a holding call that wasn't called by the refs. That's why they scored. That and then go back to. So I'll pull that one up. Stay tuned on the channel this week because I'll pull some of these plays up. But that's one of them I want to pull up. The referee also sets a screen that just knocks RSJ out of position. And I know the ref didn't mean to. He just wrong place, wrong time. It's nothing like that. It's not like you can really call anything there. But yeah, the holding was definitely part of it. And then they even had the false start there too. So I felt like there was a lot of holding, but you're going to see some of it. Billy Napier's been fired. Is that the notification that popped up on my phone? I don't see anything. Are they fired? But or is he fired? Are they fired? Is he fired? I don't see anything yet. So yeah, I feel like Billy has to be fired soon. It was kind of a despicable performance that Mississippi State kind of gave away yesterday. Mark Stoops could be another guy that's on the hot seat. I think he has lost a lot of games lately. A lot of games. Who was it? Was it Kentucky that I saw that has now lost 10 straight conference games? No, that was Wisconsin. There's the one. Wisconsin. Luke Fickell. He's got to be on the hot seat. He's got to be on the hot seat. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a few other guys that should be on the hot seat. Man, I know the opposite of the hot seat. Kurt Signetti. Guys, I think that there needs to be a serious discussion about how we're looking at logos in college football now, because Indiana is a logo that you have to take seriously now. It sounds stupid to say that, but yeah, I think that you have to take Indiana seriously. So I think if you were to look at just the numbers, and I haven't done this yet, so maybe I'm wrong. So give me some leniency, but I think if you were to look at just the numbers for Indiana and who they've gone against, they beat Oregon pretty well, and Oregon still looks good. They just whooped up on Rutgers. I know it was just Rutgers, but it was like 58-14 or something like that. So I think you look at Indiana's numbers and Ohio State's numbers next to each other, I feel like you would pick Indiana to be number one. Ohio State's got the better defense overall, but Indiana is just doing something so much different. So much different. It's just a weird Indiana team. I grew up in Indiana for about 7 years of my childhood, so I've been criticized as being a bandwagon Indiana fan, but you can go back and look up like 12-year-old me wearing an Indiana shirt. I think it says B-Town. I think that's the shirt that I used to always wear to the Indiana team, or Indiana games. We used to get in for $5 because there was nobody in there. They basically had to pay you to go and fill up their stadium, and they still couldn't fill it up. Now they've got a bigger stadium than the last time I've been there, which has been years. And I don't know. This is an Oklahoma show, but anyways, we were talking about hot seats, and it got me onto not so hot seats, and that's Kurt Cignetti, man. I like that guy a lot. I'm cheering for him. I'm cheering for Indiana throughout the rest of the season for sure, outside of Oklahoma, obviously. And you know what's weird too? My wife being I talk about her a lot, and so she gets embarrassed, but she's just gonna have to deal with it. That's part of being the host's wife. She's an Ohio State alum. She's a Buckeye through and through, born and raised a Buckeye. And she said, "I hope Indiana wins the national championship this year." I said, "Not Ohio State." No, I don't know why. I really like Indiana. So you even got people turning on their own teams to cheer on Indiana. I'm not going to do that. But Indiana's a good team, guys, and I think we need to take their logo very seriously. But let's talk about Ole Miss real quick. And it's not to talk about their loss and anything other than the fact that we need to know what happened. So it's kind of some context leading into this week as we prepare for Ole Miss. So Ole Miss, regardless, the fifth-ranked Rebels, I believe they were ranked number 5 yesterday. They lost their first game of the season. It was in Athens, Georgia, kind of dramatic fashion, falling 43-35 to the 9th-ranked Georgia Bulldogs, who their only loss was to Alabama so far. And so, this is an Ole Miss team that I think needs to be taken very seriously. So the first 3 quarters, so Ole Miss, I think, was kind of winning. The first 3 quarters, obviously they were winning. First 3 quarters, they looked like they were going to win this game. Looked really unstoppable early, kind of scoring. Let's see, it says scoring touchdowns on their first 5 possessions of the game. So couldn't remember how many that was, but 5. They took that 21-20 halftime lead, I believe it was, kind of going back and forth a lot throughout that game. And then, the 75-yard touchdown pass, I think that was while we were live yesterday on our post-game show. Trinidad Chambliss, he looks scary. And then you talk about Stribling out there at wide receiver. That's a duo that could really hurt. And to go back to the point that we were just talking about a little bit ago, with some of the the miscues in the cornerback room and that DB room, that definitely could be the duo that lights Oklahoma up. And so you do have to watch out for that. Ole Miss ended up going up 35-26 early in the fourth quarter with a 2-yard rushing touchdown from Trinidad Chambliss. Now, one thing to take away from Trinidad Chambliss that I think for Oklahoma that you can feel pretty confident in is that I think he shows a lot of what Lenore Sellers was supposed to be this year. He's very slippery. He's athletic, fast. He can run. He can also sling the ball. And Oklahoma shut really 2 guys down. I know Bryce Underwood, you may not really count too much. Oklahoma shut down Jackson Arnold pretty well. And then they'd shut down Lenore Sellers. So I think that you can feel pretty confident after that South Carolina game that, hey, you've got an answer for Chambliss. You've got an answer there for him. But the fourth quarter is really where Ole Miss ended up kind of collapsing. Everything just kind of fell apart for Kiffin's squad there in the fourth quarter. They didn't score any points out there the fourth quarter. 3 consecutive drives without a score. They had 2 3-and-outs, a turnover on downs. And Georgia ended up scoring 17 points in that fourth quarter. So defense just kind of fell apart. And in years past, that's kind of what Ole Miss has just done. They've kind of fallen apart late in the game. And so I think that's going to be crucial for Ole Miss this upcoming week to make sure that you don't fall apart in the fourth quarter. Don't let that lead get to your head. You got to keep on fighting through that final whistle. Very important for him. Because Georgia outscoring them 17-0 in the fourth quarter is really what did it. And the Rebels, they only managed 13 yards and 11 plays in the fourth quarter. Well, Georgia had 23 plays for 152 yards. So this is a Georgia team, too, that is not unstoppable by any means. But it's a Georgia team that's just, they're adaptable. They know how to adapt to just about any game. You've seen them in tight games and defensive games, and you've seen them in high-scoring offensive games. It's a Georgia team that just knows how to win. And they did it this weekend. They did it yesterday. The first punt of the game didn't come until 12:37 remaining in the fourth quarter. That's how much of an offensive game this Ole Miss Georgia game was. 12:37 remaining in the fourth quarter. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. The fourth quarter, Georgia quarterback Gunnar Stockton, he threw for 289 yards, a career high for 4 touchdowns, including 3 to the tight end, Lawson Lucky. Imagine that. Georgia's got a tight end that they can rely on, and they've got a tight end that the quarterback loves to go to. The go-ahead touchdown came with 7:29 remaining in the fourth quarter, 7-yard strike to Lucky, gave Georgia a 40-35 lead. I'm basically reading off my notes because I didn't watch a lot of this game. That was kind of going on a lot whenever we were recapping our game. Did catch the end of it, and it just felt like a game where Georgia just doesn't ever count themselves out. It's a Kirby Smart-led team. They had a 42-yard field goal with 2:06 remaining after Ole Miss kind of burned all 3 timeouts. That really put them up ahead, and Bulldogs controlled the time of possession 37-39 to 22-21. Sorry, 37-39 to 22-21. Outgained Ole Miss 510 yards to 351. Just crazy. But to look at Ole Miss, their offensive stats are still something scary. And I just said this on the recap, where Ole Miss might be that team that I feel confident that they can score 21 points, 24 points on Oklahoma's defense. One of the few offenses that I think that they could. I also feel very confident that this defense could shut them down and keep them less than 20 points. It could go either way, but this is one of the few teams that I feel like they could do something. Trinidad Chambliss, this is a D2 quarterback that nobody knew about. He was an obvious backup quarterback to Austin Simmons to start the season. He came in when Austin Simmons got hurt and took over for this Ole Miss team, where now he's kind of like, he's gotten Heisman talks. I don't think he's actually truly in the running because of I think 2 games that he's missed, at least 2.5 games. But he's a true quarterback that came in and has been just kind of a phenomenal story. Not kind of. He's been a truly phenomenal story. Went 19-36, 263 passing yards, 1 touchdown, led the team in rushing with 42 yards, 2 touchdowns on 9 attempts. Running, had a crucial 16-yard run in the fourth quarter. It was 4th and 2 in the third quarter that kept that scoring drive alive. Kawan Lacey, the running back, only had 31 yards, 2 touchdowns on 12 attempts. So again, they kind of had the same issue that I think Oklahoma has had in the past, not giving their key running back. Kawan Lacey should have gotten more than just 12 attempts. Just by looking at the stat sheet, now I haven't really dove down and looked into that game deeply enough to be able to tell, but I feel like he probably should have had more touches than that. So how about this? Kawan Lacey, he became the 18th rusher for Ole Miss in Ole Miss history to record 10 rushing touchdowns in a single season. If I'm reading that stat right, I'm pretty sure that's how that stat was. Just the 18th rusher in Ole Miss history with 10 rushing touchdowns in a single season. That's surprising to me. I feel like I typed that down wrong. That's how surprising that is. So somebody please fact check me if I'm wrong on that, because I might have just typed it wrong. That's what it feels like, but that's a crazy stat. There were 7 lead changes throughout that entire game. The first 12 drives of the game resulted in scores, 10 touchdowns and 2 field goals, no turnovers by either team. It was a really good offensive performance for both of them. Ultimately, I think Lane Kiffin at post-game, he did mention post-game. I was listening to that a little bit to hear what he had to say. He did say that Ole Miss has a lot to fix before Oklahoma. So he has a lot that he wants to fix in a game where I think they performed pretty well. They were just going against a very tough opponent. So ultimately, I think there's some playoff implications for this game because now it puts both teams at a risk of one of these teams is going to have 2 losses on the season and two of those losses being in SEC play, which really puts you with your back against the wall because I think 10-2 in the SEC gets you to the playoffs just fine, but it puts your back against the wall where you cannot lose another game. And for Oklahoma, it might be even more crucial. I don't have Ole Miss's schedule up in front of me, but for Oklahoma, they've got some very tough games coming down the stretch with at Tennessee, at Alabama. You've got LSU and Missouri at home. That is a very tough stretch down the way for Oklahoma. And so this game, you have to win the home games for Oklahoma. If you were to give up the 2 road games, I think Oklahoma fans would kind of be a little more understanding with those games as long as it was respectable and not just a complete blowout the way that it was against Texas. I think some Oklahoma fans could be a little bit more understanding about those 2 games being on the road at Tuscaloosa and in Knoxville. But it doesn't completely eliminate Ole Miss or Oklahoma from college football playoff contentions, but one more loss gets you to that point where 9-3, you're probably not going to make it into the college football playoffs. We'll be completely honest with it. For Oklahoma, if you were able to close out your season at 9-3, you still have hopes. There's still hope on the table, but it's not completely in your control. Winning this game means you are in the driver's seat. You own your own destiny. You control your own destiny. So a loss in this game means that you don't control your own destiny anymore, and that is the playoff implications for this game. So it makes this trip for Ole Miss, this trip to Norman, a very crucial one, and we will be previewing much more in that matchup here this upcoming week, and much more too. Like I said, hopefully some film breakdown, stuff like that throughout this week as well. If not, at the very least, we are going to have a live show tomorrow, Sooner Smiths, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Tuesday, Oklahoma Sooners live with myself, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and then Thursday, preview show, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. You get the kind of rhythm that we're going with here. 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and then of course post game on Saturday. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Donation super chats will be read on the show. So if you want your comment read on the show, make sure to drop that super chat or live donation. Real quick too, guys, I'm going to get to the live chat here in just a second, kind of go through, but I want to remind everybody, because we are trying to build a community here. We're trying to do a lot more than what we're currently doing. We could do a lot more with our production. So if you're watching right now, and you have a way to get in contact with us, you can either email, I believe it's oklahomavocfb@gmail.com. That's oklahomavocfb@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us, DM us on social media, because we are looking for some people to add to the production team to help us out with producing. So if you're tech savvy, if you feel like you could learn enough to be able to help us out with the production of the show, or helping with graphics, social media, we are looking for some people to add to the production team. If you don't feel like you could help and add to that way, one thing that we need is from our listeners, is that because we're trying to expand and grow and add to the production team, give you guys a better show, give you guys more shows, more content. We have a lot that we want to get to that we just can't do without a budget. And so become a member today for as low as $2.99 a month. It helps us do a lot more. And so if anything, you're helping us on the ground floor to get some things going that we really want to do, to be able to give back to you guys as Oklahoma fans that I think you guys would enjoy a lot. I know I would enjoy doing it, and I know I would enjoy watching it as an Oklahoma fan and seeing some of the stuff that we've got planned. So please become a member today. Drop a donation, super chat. Any of that stuff is extremely helpful to us and our goals here. But again, reach out to us if you feel like you're tech savvy enough, or that you feel like you could learn fast enough. We'll be patient with everybody, obviously, and we're pretty open to whoever wants to work with us. But we want people who love sports, and specifically love college football, specifically love Oklahoma sports and Oklahoma college football, not just college football, because we'll do a lot more here. We've got a lot planned. So reach out to us if you want to become a member of the team, and then of course, if you just want to support us in our search and in our growth, become a member today, or drop a super chat donation. All that lovely stuff helps us out. But going over to Jesse, he says, Do you think we run the ball on Ole Miss as well as we did against SC? I don't know if Oklahoma runs the ball as well. I'll have to go back and look at Ole Miss throughout the season a little bit closer, but I do think that from my understanding of where Ole Miss is on defense, I think Oklahoma very well could run the ball almost as well, if not as well, as they did on South Carolina. Now, obviously, the big thing is that you've got to have that as a part of your game plan, and you've got to give these backs their chance. I think Oklahoma could run the ball well. Now, I haven't really dove into this defensive line and their linebackers. I haven't really studied their team too far into depth. So I'll have more answers for you here this upcoming week for sure, and as we get closer. Going back to Mr. Dilligaff, he says, I never understand the middle of the season firings, especially if there isn't anyone out there worth getting to replace the person that was fired. The main reason why I think they do that is just because the job positioning is now open. You get yourself on the market. That way, if your guy ends up coming on the market, then you can go after him right now and you don't have to wait. So you don't have to have these weird behind. And a lot of times it's like, all right, Penn State, your season's done. And so if you're going to get rid of Franklin, I don't know. I think that one might have been premature. That was one of them. Your season's done, so you might as well just get it over with now and go through the hurt right now and have all the rest of the season to find your guy. And then you're also on the market. And then so you've got a longer period of time. I do think it is kind of silly to get rid of him mid-season, but I understand that. Let's see here. Sooner Cowboys says Ole Miss is going to be tough to stop. They may be favored to win. I think they probably will be favored to win. Let's look that up real quick because I am curious. I am a bit curious. Oklahoma is a 3.5-point favorite. So this is basically a pick'em game that because Oklahoma is at home, they're giving the spread to Oklahoma. But it's basically a pick'em game. So, yeah, that's kind of surprising. I think it's only because Ole Miss lost. Here's my thing about Ole Miss losing. And I said the same thing about Texas. I don't like going against a good opponent that lost a game that they feel like they should have won the week before. Now, I don't know. You can maybe argue that Ole Miss shouldn't have felt like they should have won the week before, but it was a really close game where they had the lead. They had the lead going into the fourth quarter. They feel like they should have won that game. And so it feels to me like they've got something to prove now, and they want to come out and bounce back and get themselves back on the right track. Whereas if they would have won against Georgia, they're coming into this Oklahoma game just feeling pretty good about themselves and going about it with the normal preparation. So I get nervous about those kinds of games. Thamel said about an hour said Florida is firing Napier. I haven't seen that yet, but I also haven't really been looking around for it either. So I do think that's interesting to fire him after barely losing. I get it. It was time to get rid of him because what Napier does too is he does things like that Texas win where he just keeps himself around because of certain wins. So it's weird. BYU and Notre Dame jumped OU. OU drops one spot to 13. I didn't look at the standings yet this morning either. When they dropped, I guess just a little bit ago, not too long ago. Yeah, they dropped down to 13. Notre Dame still above. I think they were still above Oklahoma because I think Notre Dame was above Oklahoma before too, and they struggled against South Carolina or USC yesterday. So yeah, really shocking, man. IU at number 2. Get used to that, guys. IU at number 2 because let's look at their schedule real quick. They've got UCLA, who is undefeated since firing their head coach. So that's not just an easy game, as you might count it to be, but they should win that one. They're favored right now by 24.5 over UCLA. They're not going to cover. They're gonna win by 24 points or 23 points because they're just gonna like run back and take a safety to not cover the spread. That's what Cignetti does, dude. Maryland, Penn State, Wisconsin, Purdue. I mean, they're going to be favored to win every single one of those games. This could be an undefeated Indiana team going to the Big Ten championship game against probably Ohio State. And we'll find out a lot about them in that Ohio State matchup in the Big Ten championship if that's the case. if that is the scenario, goodness, that is crazy. Crazy to see. Yeah, BYU is good. I don't know. I might put BYU ahead of Oklahoma. And I think Georgia Tech jumping up, I think that was the one that might have bumped Oklahoma down. Well, no, yeah, I guess BYU would have been the one to push Oklahoma down, but still ranked number 13. I think Oklahoma's just fine. Like I said, Oklahoma is in the driver's seat right now. If they have one more loss, they control their own destiny. Because if they lose a third one, you're not controlling your own destiny. You're relying on chaos, and you're relying on the committee to do things properly. And I will say too, when do the actual playoff rankings drop too? I haven't looked into that, but when the playoff committee starts ranking them, that's when we can really focus on the rankings. So right now, I'm not too worried. Oklahoma down at 13. That's a good spot to be at. You want to be right about there, and you're controlling your own destiny right now. So keep yourself in that spot. Now, if you lose to Ole Miss, you start to feel really shaky about controlling your own destiny because of those tough ones. I keep on checking too to see if I'm getting that notification, guys. I'm not even getting it. I guess I'm slow to the news. But no, I appreciate everybody so much for jumping in, for tuning in. Become a member today for as low as $2.99 a month. Just scan that QR code, click the link down in the description below, or just click that join button on the channel. Become a member today to help us keep on growing and to strive to build our community and do so much more. And we want to do more for our members too. So once we can build that membership platform a little bit more, we want to do even more for members specifically. And then, of course, it's going to benefit everyone who's able to tune into our channel. So please become a member today. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, follow us on social media. We got all things kind of brewing this week, so stay tuned here on Oklahoma at the Voice of College Football. We'll catch you guys next time. Boomer.